Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Andrew Haycock and I talk about the art and science of human flourishing. Thank you to everybody who saw the video that I posted yesterday as my first video, and I appreciate all of you and your support and the love and encouragement that you offered. And I was eager to get back to it today, so I'm recording my second video. Today I want to talk about how taking cold showers has changed my life. And before I can really get to that point, I have to start earlier in my life story and mention that I've had a lifelong struggle with major depression. It's just one of the most important facts of my life and has kind of defined everything about definitely my adult life, the struggles that I've had with it, and being basically crippled by major depression for my whole adult life up until a few years ago. And like many people who have issues with depression or anxiety or the like, eventually they often will find their way into a doctor's office where they'll be offered a prescription for one kind of drug or another. And like many people, about 15 years ago, I started taking an antidepressant, Zoloft, and I was also taking it in conjunction with a stimulant medication, Adderall, when I was in my first year of law school. And I experienced a really bad interaction between the two drugs, and really caused my mood to become much worse. That's been my experience also with antidepressant medication in particular, that I've had no actual benefit from taking any antidepressant, but I've had a lot of adverse consequences in my life as a result. And that started a 13-year odyssey with basically being completely disabled while also being on several psychotropic medications for depression or anxiety. And then also when you take psychiatric drugs, a lot of people who will know this, one drug will lead to several more because they'll have side effects, and you'll need another drug to manage the side effects and so on. And that's what's known as the drug cascade. And it's just kind of a basic fact for a lot of people that are psychiatric patients that people don't really talk about, but was definitely true for me. And I guess after about 8 years, it was in the middle of 2020, I was in a treatment center for major depression and also for alcoholism, and that's another part of my story, was to manage the hopelessness from having this problem, which I was told was a medical problem, and it was caused by a disease in my brain which was incurable, and that the only way to manage it was just to take medication to prevent it from getting worse. But when the medications didn't help, I just thought that my life was hopeless. That was really what I took away from having a psychiatric diagnosis and from the non-response I had to any kind of psychiatric treatment for mood. And I was in this treatment center, and I found myself on 9 different medications daily. Now, some of that was that they were cross-titrating me, which is where you're coming off of a drug while you're also coming up on another one. Because with psychotropic drugs, you can't just stop taking them. You can go through a really severe withdrawal. And psychiatric drug withdrawal is actually, unfortunately, is a controversial topic, even though I don't think it should be. And it's something that I do plan on going into in more detail on my channel. But when I do that, I want to make sure that I'm ready to do it responsibly. And I'm already kind of in the process of arranging to have an expert come on to be able to actually discuss, an expert in psychiatric medicine, to actually discuss what these drugs do, what they don't do, and the reality of what the drug withdrawal looks like. But basically, my understanding of it, as I've learned through the years of just figuring out what are these drugs and how do they work, is that our brain is an amazing homeostasis machine. It just wants to maintain the balance. Now, that if you're already super major depressed, that kind of sucks, because that's what it wants to stay. And the more depressed you are, the more depression you get. But when you start introducing a chemical into the brain that alters the chemistry of the brain, such as psychiatric drugs or any kind of other drugs or alcohol that you might take, or including things like caffeine, if you're starting to take them every day, eventually you become adapted to them. And the process of that is that whatever you do, if you're raising a certain neurotransmitter in the brain, such as serotonin, like antidepressant drugs tend to work on, your brain will compensate for that by downregulating serotonin production. It will seek to restore the balance. And generally, it was my experience that a lot of drugs that I took just didn't do anything at all in a positive sense. And I've taken somewhere between 40 and 50 of these medications by now. So I do have a good bit of experience with these kinds of drugs. That even if I did notice anything, that whatever change would essentially evaporate within a few months when I restored back to homeostasis. But here's the problem, and you might already know where this is going. You have this chemical, this drug, that's ligand, that's activating the production of a certain neurotransmitter. And so in response, your body is downregulating, your brain is downregulating the natural production of that neurotransmitter to get you back to where you were when you started. Well, guess what happens when you stop taking the drug? It's the same thing as you began with, but in the reverse direction. And now you have this oppositional tolerance, this opposition to push back against the existence of that drug. But when you withdraw the drug, that opposition becomes unopposed. That tolerance runs away. And what you get is what was colloquially known as withdrawal. That's what happens when you abruptly cold turkey on any kind of drug. There are some recreational drugs that, like such as alcohol in particular, where it's actually very dangerous to just abruptly stop drinking alcohol if you are severely addicted to it, because you can have seizures and die. So that's just, for example, same problem with benzodiazepines. So I've been on all number of these drugs. I've been through withdrawal from, I don't know, at least 12.5 different drugs, some prescription drugs, some others. And that was what happened with me. And in 2020, I was at this treatment center. I decided I wanted to come off of these drugs and just try to go back to baseline and just see if I really even had anything wrong with my brain biologically, because I was very convicted in my mind that the drugs were actually making things worse. I still maintain this belief today, and it's difficult because it's a very hard thing to prove or disprove. And I know it can be a very controversial and maybe even inflammatory claim to make, but I believe in my life experience that my life was not better when I was on these drugs. And in fact, I was never more symptomatic. I was never more depressed. My mood was never more unstable. And I was dependent on doctors to tell me what I needed to do. I was always dependent on them to pick the drug and to prescribe it. I had to go get it from a pharmacy. And I kind of just would sit around and wait for someone to tell me what's the next drug to solve the problem. And I was, after 8 years of that, and my life was just so much worse than it was when I began. I had this realization during the pandemic that I was so much worse off as a result of having ever agreed to see a psychiatrist. And so I wanted to just withdraw from the drugs, go through that process, and see what my baseline would be like, and if I would feel any different, different, better, worse, anything, to just see if the drugs were making any difference, other than to make me to cause a lot of side effects and adverse reactions. So I decided to do that in August of 2020, and it took me until April of 2023. So it was about 2.5 year process of continuous drug withdrawal. I tapered on each of them in a controlled process, and some drugs are easier to taper than others, and that, for me, it was just at an individual level. I don't think that you can make any kind of blanket statement about how drugs affect people at a populational level. So it was just my experience that it took me 2.5 years to manage the withdrawal process, which was painful. It caused me to have, it's hard to go through psychiatric drug withdrawal because many physicians in the United States are trained to believe that if a patient discontinues their medication or withdraws or comes through, reduces it and they become symptomatic, to treat that as a relapse of the condition. Basically, to say that that's the depression we were trying to treat, now it's coming back, therefore it must have been working. And I think that's obviously there's always a chance that that's true, but I think that there is a widespread ignorance among the medical community in the United States as to the reality of psychiatric drug withdrawal. And so they kind of call a withdrawal a relapse. And it's very hard to just know, you question your own sanity. It's hard. There's this term I came up with, self-gaslighting, just like, am I crazy or whatever? And that was a very difficult time in my life. But fortunately, for most of the time, I had 2 amazing therapists, one and then followed by the other, and connected with an amazing psychiatrist here in Nashville who helped me go through that process safely and to help keep me accountable to the things that we agreed that we were going to do. And the last one that I withdrew from, I knew it was going to be difficult. It was a drug called Latuda that I'd been on 9 years, and it was an atypical antipsychotic, which is typically prescribed to people with treatment-resistant depression. And I don't think I ever should have been on the drug in the first place, but I had gotten on it, and then I didn't feel it was benefiting me after a year, but every time I tried to come off it, I would become so profoundly and existentially depressed. It was unmanageable, and I was worried I would commit suicide. That was the reality. And far worse depression and anxiety than I'd ever experienced before or since. But I had to try. I had to try and see if there was, if it was actually doing anything beneficial. And so I went through a controlled withdrawal, and it took about 6 months on that last medication. And when I finally came off of it, it was in the spring of 2023. I had crippling anxiety. I basically was having panic disorder, and there was kind of a delusional quality to the panic that I was having. I've never really had issues with anxiety that weren't caused by psychiatric drugs. I've had adverse reactions to drugs like Wellbutrin, for example, is an SNRI, and that gave me really bad anxiety, disorder, and so I discontinued it. But just naturally, that's I've never had an issue with like really bad clinical anxiety, but that's what I had with that withdrawal. And I also had a profound existential depression. I mean, I was in a complete collapse state. And I spent about 3 months like that, laying in bed. And the only thing that really kept me going, I was seeing my psychiatrist regularly. I just started working with a new therapist who I still see today. And I was going into the doctor's office, and there were people just kind of checking on me and holding me accountable. But other than that, I laid in bed and I watched movies. I had food delivered to my house, and I definitely couldn't bathe. I couldn't brush my teeth. I couldn't clean up after myself. Couldn't cook for myself. Couldn't buy groceries. Those had been normal in this period of depression. I mean, this 10 plus year period of depression, I could not engage really in any self-care. I definitely didn't brush my teeth. Like I'm embarrassed to admit that, but it's just the truth. It's just the reality. A lot of days my goal was just to like walk outside for a minute, and I couldn't do that. And during this 3-month period, it was very, very bad. But after a couple months, things started getting better. And I remember there was a day, and I was just tired of sleeping, basically. And I'd finally found a day when I just remember it was nice. It was in the summer, and I got up, and all of a sudden, I've never done this in my life before. I turned around and I immediately made my bed. And I've never done that before, ever. Like I just never, and no one told me to do it. I just did it. And then I walked straight to the bathroom to brush my teeth, and I was just like, what just happened? I mean, I was like, what? Like, why am I brushing my teeth? I'm not going to see anybody. Like, I don't need to pretend I'm not depressed today, which is generally when I would brush my teeth in the past. And I happened to talk to my therapist that day, a new guy I'd been seeing, and he just was like, oh, okay, you should start taking cold showers next. And that was, I think, probably still the most impactful advice I've ever gotten. And the conversation that we had was, and I said, like, why would I want to take cold showers? Because I'd known about Andrew Huberman was big at this time, and I'd done some cold water immersion. I'd gotten in Boulder Creek several times in a Speedo, and done stuff like that. But I was just like, what would a cold shower? What's that going to do? And he said, it's going to build grit. And I'd never really heard of the term grit in that context, in any kind of psychological context. There is a book called Grit by Angela Duckworth, who's a psychology researcher that's actually very good. But he explained to me basically it's going to help you build momentum to do hard things, because getting in cold water is hard. It's really hard. It's hard to want to do it. You're like, I don't want to do it. But I had already kind of had this momentum of like making my bed. I'd done that a couple days in a row. Started brushing my teeth, and I was like, I just want to add one small habit. There's another book that is relevant here. It's called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And what an atomic habit is, it's the smallest possible unit of habit. The smallest little bit of behavior change with the least amount of friction. Do that daily, and then start adding new ones once that becomes easy. And then all of a sudden you get this compounding growth in your life as a result of habits compounding on top of habits. And for me, that one was taking cold showers. And there's kind of this thing of like, I don't want to do it. And that's the moment. Like, that's the moment where change happens, when you decide, I don't want to do it. That's why I'm going to do it. That's why I'm going to do it anyway. And also, I found cold showers also make me feel amazing. This morning, I had a sleep issue. I still have some challenges with my sleep. And I woke up at 4 a.m., wanted to go back to sleep, couldn't. Fell back asleep at 7:30, woke up, was just really groggy. My REM sleep was intruding in my day, and it's just like hard. And I realized about 2 hours ago, I was like, I'm going to take a cold shower right now, and that's probably going to pep me right up. The water doesn't get super cold here right now in Nashville, but I did it, and it did. It helped me a lot, and I'm like, great, I'm going to record this video. I've been planning on it anyway to talk about cold showers. But I did. I started taking cold showers every day. And after that, a few weeks later, I saw my therapist, and he was like, how are things going? I was like, I did all my laundry. Now, that's a big deal. That's another fact in my life is, I think I carried the same piles of dirty laundry around with me for 10 years. I couldn't do laundry by myself. To sustain that amount of effort and attention would have been unthinkable in the state that I was in with the depression. But also, getting a psychiatric diagnosis for me created this, it really solidified kind of this victim mindset that I had, that I was just, or that I was a sick person, basically a sick person mindset, enfeebled, and I was, my identity became defined by the things that I wasn't able to do and all of the shame that brought me. And so there was just no way I could do my own laundry. I could pay people to do it at some times, but generally not, because I couldn't really work on any sustained basis. But I did. It was several piles of laundry, and it just felt so liberating. I mean, just to have this pile of shame in the corner with you everywhere you go for like a decade, and it was gone. And now, today, and the cold showers, things like that, they did continue to build this momentum. And now, like, there are some things that I definitely do every day. One of them is I make my bed every day. I don't even think about it. It's not like, I'm not saying like, oh, I'm a better person or whatever. Admiral William McRaven has an amazing commencement at the University of Texas graduation where he gives this speech about making your bed. And that is an amazing habit. It's just, life's better for me when I make my bed. It doesn't take half a second. I just do it. I brush my teeth every day, and that's not something that I think most people would think should be something to brag about. It's just kind of a basic thing. But when you're so depressed that you can't even brush your teeth, being able to brush your teeth, like, I can't explain how grateful I am to be able to brush my teeth every day, and it's not a big deal. And I also do my laundry. Love doing my laundry. I do it a couple times a week. I don't let it pile up. It feels great. It's awesome. And the cold showers thing that was the turning point for me, and it was really the advice and the recognition. Thank God I was lucky enough to have someone to tell me. Doing this really hard thing, having this controlled discomfort of this cold water hitting your skin, is how you're going to build grit, because the body gets used to it. There's another, I mentioned earlier that concept of oppositional tolerance. There's a book called Dopamine Nation that Dr. Lembke wrote. She's a psychiatrist at Stanford. And it basically explains this concept. The brain has a pleasure-pain balance. And if you give your brain a bunch of pleasure with dopaminergic drugs, it's going to give you a bunch of pain in the form of craving and withdrawal. But if you give your brain pain in the form of things like exercise, then it's going to give you back pleasure. And that all takes place at a neurobiological level. And so counterintuitively, the best way to have sustained satisfaction in life is to give yourself controlled doses of discomfort. And now I love doing hard things. I also love being able to do hard things. It brings me a lot of joy and satisfaction and like pride, I guess, that I do CrossFit and I love it. I was very overweight at the time that I came off that drug. Oh, by the way, I spent 3 months in bed and I couldn't get out of bed. I definitely wasn't shaving. So that's how I grew this beard. After 3 months, I woke up, I had this beard. I figured I would keep it. Like, it's my withdrawal beard. And I look different now. I think I'm going to post on this video footage of me getting in Boulder Creek and Speedo when I was fat and beardless. And when you go through an experience like I've been through, where you go through the dark night of the soul, if you come through it, you come out differently. And there's something about, I think there's a saying, if you're going through hell, don't stop, like, keep going. And that's what I would say to anyone watching this. Like, if you're not sure where to start and you want to change your life, don't stop where you are. Keep going. Just do anything. And I would recommend trying to take a cold shower. Do it. If you want to start with making your bed, you want to start with something easier. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. But a cold shower will alter the neurobiology of your brain. It's going to give you that discomfort. There's all kind of cool things that happen in your body when you get in cold water. And I might go into that on another video, but there's so much out there about cold plunges and optimizing. And I'm not like a science optimizer. I'm just saying, like, this is what's helped change my life. And within 3 months of that momentum I started building of taking cold showers and doing my laundry and just leaving the house, going to the gym, I did the hardest thing that to that point I had ever done. My therapist, who's an amazing person, said, oh, yeah, I was going to Colorado with my family in July. It was Breckenridge. He was like, oh, you should summit a 14er. And I was like, what does that mean? What does that mean? He was like, you should climb a 14,000 foot mountain. And I was like, there's no way I can do that. And no way. Right. When I got off that drug, I couldn't walk to the end of my driveway without needing a break. Like, I was that broken down physically. And he was like, no, just do Quandary. Quandary's easy. Quandary's not easy. Like, there's no 14,000 foot summit is easy. It was maybe the easiest one, but it took me 7 hours to go. Not 17, but I did it. And just the sense of like accomplishment and the momentum that I'd built was just amazing. It was extraordinary. And I'm still so grateful for that experience. And so that's the story of how taking cold showers changed my life. And that's just a little micro atomic habit that I had. And it's still something that I go back to. And I'm trying to continue to take that kind of approach of just these little micro wins with this YouTube channel. Like I'm recording right now. It's the day after I posted my first video. I'm going to work on this, and it's my goal to post something every Monday and Thursday and just commit to that schedule. And even if it's not perfect, especially if it's not perfect, like my first video sucked, but that's a good thing. And this video, I took a cold shower before. And I just want to say that, like anybody, I mentioned some serious topics in here, and I know that there's certain algorithms that will flag certain terms, but if you're having challenges with mental health, and or just you're just plain unhappy and you don't know where to start, like I said, if you're going through hell, don't stop. Keep going. Like, you can do this. I promise. If I could do it, you can do it. You just have to find a way that's right for you. You've got to find something that your body will respond to, whether that be a medication or a lifestyle or the right kind of therapy or the right career, or there's something out there. You can find it. Just keep going.